Today we are making pot holders. I don't know if you have watched my tutorial on the corner bookmarks. This is basically a corner bookmark, but made on a much larger scale. That's it. It's so easy. Let me walk you through what you're going to need for this. Lots of different ways you can make them. I have found that this is how I prefer to make it, but you can do it after you start sewing them. You're going to come up with something that's kind of like the rubber gripper jar opener that we have made and revamped like 3 or 4 times. Yeah, it's very much like that. You're going to find what works for you. I'm just going to show you after sewing 5 or 6 of these what I have found and learned about. Every time I make one, I go, oh, I wish I had this. Oh, I wish I had done this. All right, let me show you what I've learned so far. 2 pieces, top and bottom material, all cut at 8.5 by 8.5. 2 pieces of what I'm using is a Pellon Wrap and Zap. It comes on a bolt. I get it from Amazon. You can get it anywhere, and you can get it in a bag. You can get it all kinds of different ways. Okay, so you need those. We're going to stitch those together. Then you're going to have another 8.5 by 8.5 that you fold into a triangle. That's going to be your corner piece that the hand slides into. You're also going to need a 2-inch by 4-inch piece of material that you will fold up into what I lovingly call a material taco. And you are going to fold it in half. Then you're going to take the bottom, fold that up into that fold line, and you're going to take the top and fold it down to the fold line. Fold those two over on top of themselves, and you create this little material taco. You're going to stitch down both sides of that. I have done that already and have my little tab here. Here's one thing I have learned is that this is awesome. However, when you hook it on something, it's going to have to go like this, which means this is going to kind of want to turn. So I thought, why won't we just go ahead and kind of create that opening so it's ready to go? And that means that you kind of have to twist your 2 pieces at the bottom so that they just lay and create this nice little opening. Let me put that back up there so I don't lose it. All right, first things first, you are going to stitch each one of these top and bottom pieces to a piece of the batting. And I'm going to just do one diagonal line that is going to line up, and I'll show you kind of what I'm talking about. I stitch one diagonal line on the top and the bottom piece, and then that is kind of how I line up my corner piece. I have found that when I do that, it folds much easier for reaching into the oven and grabbing something. When you don't, it doesn't always fold easily. Just something I found. You don't have to do it. Optional. Everything is optional. All right, so I'm going to stitch diagonally down each piece, not each side. I'm only going to do one diagonal. I am not going to back stitch because we're going to lock all this in. If you are a new sewist and you are not 100% comfortable just freestyling and winging it, you might want to grab your ruler, draw a line from corner to corner, and then stitch down from one side to the other. I'm a big fan of winging it, eyeballing it. You can see it's not all perfectly lined up, but honestly, it's not going to matter because it's going to fold in and be busy and all the things. So don't beat yourself up. Sewing is not about perfection. It never has been. I mean, I'm talking about sewing. If you're a quilter, then you're all about trying to get your lines lined up and points on point and all of that. It's a little more intense, and again, you're not going to get perfection, but you're going to get pretty darn close if you're quilting. All right, we're going to go ahead and do the other side. Pull that up. I did go with about a 2.75 stitch length because I have found when doing this that it kind of it's tight. It's a lot of pieces and thickness, and so it will kind of pull the seams a little bit, and I don't want them to pull. I want them to just look nice and neat. Okay, what we're going to do is we are going to add this on here, and I'm just lining it up a little bit with my seam. The biggest thing you want to think about when you're putting this on is that this back here is lined up with your material and that you don't have any, okay, so see how this is? I'm going to cut that off because what will happen is it will get missed in the stitching and I will have to redo it. Trust me, I've had to do it already. So, lessons we learn. I like this side because it has a lot more of the busy print on it. So I'm going to go ahead and flip that over. I'm going to set my corner to corner, and then I'm going to line up my sides and push those out so that everything is in. We're going to sew this at a 1/2 of an inch. So it should pick up everything all together. Now we're going to take our little tab, and we want to think about the pot holder is going to sit like this, and we want it to connect to the bottom. So we're going to put it in here at the bottom. And when you do this, you have to think about this is the inside, so you want to put it facing in. And I am just going to try to center this as much as I can with my stitch line. And it's going to be a little bulky because it's not going to lay flat. And I'm going to go ahead. I have it in between my corner piece and my top piece. And I'm going to stitch across, straight across. I'm not going to go, and I'm going right at the end of it. I'm just going to do a stitch to kind of hold it. And I'll show you what I'm talking about here. So I really just did across here for that to hold in place. All right, reline up. I'm just moving this out of the way. So now we're going to put our top piece on. You want to think about the diagonal line that you stitched on here. It needs to line up with the diagonal line on the other one. We're going to line those up, put them on here. All right, I think we're golden. Now, what I want to think about is this is the side that my corner piece is on, right? So I know that my corner piece is over here. I know that my tab is here. I'm going to leave my opening because I don't want to fight any of that. I want to leave my opening down here for closing off down on this bottom piece. I'm using a heat erase pen to kind of mark where I'm going to start and stop. You want to leave a fairly big opening. This is a lot of batting to turn, and you want to not have it pull or stretch any of the threads where you start and stop. We're going to do this using a white thread. Flip that up. The next thing we're going to do is trim off all of our corners. This is a lot of bulk, so you want to trim that down. I go through and I'm going to trim off my corners first. All right, where we made our little marks, this side is where we're going to turn. I'm not going to touch anything on this side. I'm going to leave all that extra material. It's just going to make it so much easier when you go to turn. All the others, I'm going to trim down to 1/4 of an inch and eliminate as much bulk as I can, maybe even like between 1/4 of an inch and 1/8 of an inch, whatever you're comfortable getting that down to. I'm just trying to make it easy for when we go to sew all the way around it, the top stitch. It just makes it easier not getting through all of those layers. But when you go to close off this, you want that extra material, so don't cut that. And these are just things that as I've sewn like 6 of these, I've decided, oh, shoot, I should have done this. So you do you, but I'm just sharing with you what I have found to work. So what I did here is just making sure that where I started and stopped, I did eliminate some in the corner, but I'm leaving this a full 1/2 inch for turning. All right, now then, we are going to reach in here. We're going in between the 2 pieces of material. Okay, so my tab is over there. I'm going to go ahead and pull this through. Just going to poke each corner out a little bit. This one's going to be a little bit more square because of the tab on there. That's all right. We know that's what it's going to look like. And last corner, pop that out. All right, so I go through and just give it a good press with my fingers first. And then I'm going to use my chopstick. And I'm going to take a moment and roll all of these edges out. Get them all squared away. Yeah, see, this tab is much better for hanging something from. That's going to work out great. So we're going to stick this in here. We're just going to give a little poke. You're not going to get a pointy corner. It's going to be a little bit more rounded. Great. That's the way you want it. And you just kind of work it a little bit till you get things pushed out. We're going to see if we can push this out a little bit. Give it a little pull. And now what I do is I work my way all the way around this, just pinching and rolling and pushing this seam up to the edge. What you're looking for is just eliminating any, let me see if I can find a spot. So like if you don't push it out, you could end up with a lot of like extra material in this fold. So if you pinch it and roll it, it brings the seam right up to the top, and that's what you want, especially for sewing this top stitch. You want to get that 1/4 of an inch seam that you left on there pushed as far up as possible. So it just makes it easier when you go to do your top stitch. You're going to do that on all sides, really just pinching and rolling, and you'll feel it. And when you start pinching it and kind of giving it a little pull, you can tell it's moving. Okay, so you do that all the way around. Now here you're just going to be putting your finger in there and kind of giving it a tug, and it should just kind of fold in on itself. And then you're going to clip that. So I'm just putting it down so that I know it's in. And both sides line up, and we're going to just put a clip there, a couple of clips to hold that as we move through it. Okay, it's looking fabulous. Now, what we're going to do is I always start on the side that I have the opening on, and I'm going to start right about where I know I need to close it off. Tuck that in, make sure it's nice and neat. And then when I come back around, I'm going to end right about there as well. So we're going to slide that in and under. I'm going to go ahead and take my first clip out and get that right at about 1/4 of an inch. It is really thick, so you want to take your time when you're getting it into the sewing machine. You want to make sure you've got everything lined up. I do have a little bit sticking out that I want to tuck in. I'm just using my seam ripper point to really get that tucked in. All right, I'm going to hold on to these little threads out here on the side, because sometimes we get that bird's nest on the back. We don't want that. We want it to look really nice. So we're going to hold that for about 3 stitches. Then you can let go. I'm going to back stitch a couple, and then I'm just going to move right on down at 1/4 of an inch. Keeping in mind, this side is very thick. This has your 2 pieces of batting, your 2 pieces of material. So you want to move through it kind of slowly. But then once you get around this corner, you're going to be back to that 1/4 of an inch seam that you've rolled and pushed out, and it's just going to make it so much easier. And then I'm just going to go across this, a little bit more of a straight line across. And there you have your pot holder this way. And your little tab is at the bottom. So all those things you want to think about when you're putting it together, and knowing that you're going to fold it and turn it right side out. Where do you want your little thing to, your tab, your hoop, your loop, whatever you want to call that. Where do you want that? How do you want this to be? I think I made one where I felt like it was a little more left-handed than right-handed because of where the tab was. So think about all the little things, but that's how I have decided I like it best. And I do think that this little loop tab is so much better than just this flat tab, and you can do it either way honestly, it's not really, I don't know if it's a big deal or not, but that's how I've decided to do it. I hope that you save this, give it a little like, and make it with me later when you have all of your pieces cut out. I'm Cassie. This is 62 Handcrafted. You can find me on YouTube for full-length tutorials. 62 Handcrafted Happiness. I'll see y'all soon.